Thank you, Sarah. And hello, everyone. Welcome. And also thank you, Sarah, for mentioning that, yes, I am from Murray State University. I just realized even on my introduction slide there that I didn't include my employer university, but I did include another university. And I'm going to talk about that for just a moment. So I am an associate professor. In full transparency here, I'm not a librarian. So I am in, hopefully you would consider a parallel field, journalism and mass media. And I've been at Murray State since 2013. But last fall, I decided, I think I don't have anything else to do, and I would like to know what my academic librarians know. So I decided to enter into a Master of Library and Information Science master's degree at the University of Arizona online. So this pretty much stems from some of the, at least one particular course, and I'll talk about that more in a moment, but I just want to let everyone know. So if you're like, wow, I wonder what this library instructor might have. I'm not a library instructor, but I work closely with mine and I value her so much. She is a wealth of information, as well as all the librarians there at Murray State University are, and I'm very thankful for them. So I thank all of you for the work that you do, because really academic libraries are the central hub of any college or university. So thank you so much for everything with that. So I am excited though, and this is not anything really glamorous or high scale. It's just something that really caught my attention. And I think I just wanted to share it in a form where maybe you all might be able to take it somehow and modify it for your colleagues with whom you might work with in a certain college or academic unit on your campus. So this is really the point of that presentation. So we're going to start a little bit first. If you don't mind, you don't have to, but if you don't mind, go to polev.com/Melony. And when you do, now if you do it from your phone, I believe then you have to probably activate a code. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to exit out of this screen and I'm going to go to another tab that has that particular site. Okay, and I'm going to present that. So you should be seeing that. And I'm just curious to know, where are you joining us from? So, and y'all, I can see that many of you have caught on to this lesson already. So that's great. I'm just, wow. I knew that we had a presenter from out in the, I'm going to say Midwest, but I've also learned having, being at the University of Arizona, even though it's online, there's still even, I think, a nuance between Western and Midwestern. So, wow, look at everybody from all over. We'll give it just a couple more seconds. This is really nice. I like to see the map filled with all of these pinpoints being dropped as to where we're all watching and learning together. So this is wonderful. Okay, and I think that we're still got a few drops going. So I see that, of course, the central location tends to be dominating around in the southeastern part of the United States. We've got a good contingency up in the Northeast. And then definitely have many of our colleagues sprinkled across the Midwest and West. So this is really wonderful. And I thank you all so much for attending this session and for participating in that one. Thank you. Thank you. And probably what I'll do is after the session, I'm going to go back and look to see if we have any latecomers, and I'd like to see where they might have possibly dropped their pin. So thank you for participating. I'm going to get back out and then switch tabs again. And I also ask that you not judge me according to all the tabs that I have open on my computer. So thank you. So you all know the word metadata. And this was probably the big lesson that I got out of a certain course, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but how really it's just not just for librarians. I've always learned about metadata. It's just data about data. But what I've learned more is that it's structured information, and maybe not so much structured as it is also how it's organized and how we use that organization to make sense of something or to see the connections to something else. And even though it's a certain piece of information that we tend to associate more with librarians and library science, I believe that metadata knowledge, though, is useful and beneficial for even our own learners when seeking sources for perhaps research. So this is really the nexus of this presentation. So with my story here, how I came about this is last fall I took a course. It was a foundations course, and those of you who have gone through any type of MLIS program, you might recall taking some sort of foundations course where you learned about the history as well as some of the main topics that are going to be part of a deeper curriculum as you move forward in the program. For some reason, and I don't know what it is, and I've had this conversation with when she was our Dean of Libraries, but now she serves as our Assistant Provost. And then when I had the same conversation with my instructional librarian, because they both wrote the recommendation letters for me, I told them, I said, there's something about metadata that I have gravitated toward, and I don't know what it is. Other than I think the only way that I see it, it's like this huge web. And it is a way for me to consult how different strings are attached. So if I am stuck at one place, I can try to find another pathway to that other piece of information. So when I was thinking about this unit on metadata that we were introduced to in my foundations course, I was thinking, gosh, I can somehow integrate this into some sort of project or assignment that I give to my students. And I teach both undergraduate and graduate students, but I didn't know still even then what course I was going to do. I just knew that there was something about this, even at the most surface level, that I could share with my own students and try to empower them more with how you can use another piece of information. And if you use it, if you know how to find it and you know how to use it, then it can lead you to something else. So that's pretty much my story and how this presentation has come to being. And I just wanted to share that with you so that you have an understanding as to how this particular lesson I will share with you has come to be. It's still going to evolve. In fact, I have some ideas at the end as to what I plan to do. And throughout this conference a little bit, I've been like, I could even do this, I can do that. So, there's some other things popping up in the works. So what I'm hoping that you'll be able to do by the end of the session, or to maybe help with your faculty colleagues. This could be a course that either you teach in library instruction, or maybe that you help the unit that where your subject matter is, that you can find maybe a course where you're thinking that students who do some kind of research, whether it's grand or it's small, but just anytime they're doing some kind of research, and how you think that could be a possibility to add to the instruction for them. And then second, as well as then third, but then I even planned a library workshop, and I'll tell you about that. And I'm sure you might do something similar, but if not, maybe consider that and include some sort of, again, type of small focus on metadata. And that perhaps you can create at least one activity, just one small learning activity that can be done in the classroom. And then that one assessment, which most likely could be the draft of a research paper, perhaps, that will allow students to practice and apply that knowledge and what they know and how to use metadata, and see if their research or their assessment would be richer as a result. So those are my objectives for this session for you today. So using metadata. So I've kind of shared some ideas as to what metadata is to me right now. Actually, my next course coming up in the fall of 2023, so this coming semester, is the organization of information. So it will be a little bit of a deeper focus on metadata. But I am curious to know, what is metadata to you? So there is a link here. And what I'm going to do, let me get out of this. I'm going to go to the Jamboard. And I'm going to then put that link in the chat for you, so that way you can access it. So let me move a lot of these buttons and screens that are all the way around here. Okay. Put it in the chat. And there it is. And you should be able to access that. Yes, I see everybody populating now. Okay, great. So those of you, if you don't know how to use Jamboard, I think many of us do, but if you don't, if you see these various options on your left panel, of course, there's a pen you can write if you want to do a sticky note, which I already see. Maybe there's an image that you could include that might represent your idea of what you think metadata or what metadata means to you. So there are some options here. Okay, I'm going to move some of these around so that way I can see. Move this chat this way. All right. Oh yeah, y'all are, I see all of these phrases and terms that I remember from my classes. So I'm going to kind of position some of these, give everybody a moment, and then we'll kind of just review some of these a little bit together. Populating really well. Okay, so we're going to have some more, but until then, I'm going to just start with a few. I do like the idea, and I see descriptive as a common phrase here, descriptive information and descriptive content. This is excellent. And actually, even with this description of the information, this is something that I shared with students about that. I also like this one here, the big picture of data. I like that idea, and I think that's a great thing to really start with for students, especially undergraduate students. If you want to, share that with them, because that is, it's this huge pot of information, and and we can see the big picture of it. It's kind of like a mosaic. Mosaic has small pieces, but when you put them all together, then you've got this great big picture. So that's kind of how I would see also metadata in that same way. Keywords, yes, thank you. I like that. That's probably the big way that I've used it with my students. Mark records, yes, I do remember studying about that. Cataloging, yes, I love that word. Access points for discovery. I like that one. That's excellent. The back end data that determines how objects can best be found. Absolutely. And that's one of the things I really wanted to impress upon my students was that these are not arbitrary. This is something that really there's a way of determining how we can use metadata, especially in the controlled vocabulary sense. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Information about information, yes. Yes, description, keywords, tags, format. Yes, that one goes all the way into the various components very well. Like putting together a puzzle to make information accessible. Absolutely, right? A connection of symbols representing information. Fabulous. You all have really contributed some excellent ideas, and I appreciate seeing the diverse perspectives that even librarians have about metadata, because I do think it means something different to everyone. So thank you so much for doing that. I'm going to go back to the slide deck. Okay, so thank you so much. So just as the idea of metadata is used differently among all of us here at this conference, it's also used differently across environments. So even in different disciplines, we might see data or metadata differently. From my perspective in my field, so I teach on the undergraduate level. I teach a plethora of courses really, but they all connect somehow to media, whether it's journalism or public relations. On the graduate level, I'm purely public relations because that's the master's degree that we offer. So even in public relations, metadata can be mostly tied to a lot of social media. If you were in the previous session, there was a previous session about social media and how citing a tweet and all of that. And that was a really, I think, excellent perspective shared about how even social media content can be those pieces of information that can be usable, provided that they're valid and reliable. So even in my field of public relations, hashtags are important pieces of metadata that we use to plan messaging, that we also use to track how our messages are being used across the social media environment. So it's used differently across all the disciplines and definitely other fields. So as many of you indicated on the Jamboard, it may be records that describe, so descriptions. But let's take that a little bit further. Some might describe digital objects, while others might see metadata as really useful to describe both the digital and non-digital objects. I do think the word metadata, though, has been thrusted more within probably the last couple of decades because of the digital environment, especially more mainstream, I should say. In a way, though, students use metadata-rich digital information systems already. They just don't know it. And not only do they know it, therefore, they probably really don't know how to perhaps use it to a way that's going to be useful, beneficial, or productive. So this was something that I really wanted them to understand how to do better. And I do believe that if we can give them a little basic understanding of how to use metadata, and especially maybe on certain assignments, maybe not every assignment does it need to call for the use of it, but if we can find a way to help them, regardless of their discipline, to see how information resources are connected, or how we can find a way to continue on a certain journey in finding what they need, I think that they might find their information seeking to be more powerful. So this was something that really spoke to me when I was going through, again, my own instruction, and then really trying to, and then putting it into action and seeing some of the students' responses to it. So let me tell you about the class that I integrated this, the idea of metadata into. I teach media literacy and society. It's a undergraduate, lower level one. It's JMC 168. And JMC 168 is required in 4 majors that we have in our department. So journalism, advertising, public relations, and television production. So if a student is majoring in any one of those 4 programs, they have to take this course. Fall of last year, we were actually, our course was part of the newly launched, or actually I take that back, it was 2 years ago, I apologize. 2 years ago, so fall of 2021, when we launched the new university studies curriculum. I'm the assessment coordinator in my department, so I worked with the curriculum coordinators of the 4 majors to make sure that if we wanted to put this as part of the university studies curriculum, that we had to follow certain assessment guidelines and make sure everything aligned with what they were needing. We used certain rubrics, etc. So we are also now a general studies elective, which is tremendously awesome because we get students not just from our own majors, but outside the department. We did this in a way, though, that was rather self-serving to us. We were hoping that maybe students who were undecided about a major, or perhaps were in a major and they're not happy with, they might come to our program after taking the media literacy and society course. So, but I wanted to give you an understanding of how our course is situated, both in our major curriculum and the program of study, as well as in the university studies curriculum. So I introduce students to the idea of metadata. So that way they can learn how to go through library databases differently, as well as another database that you already know this, but I used that to show them how they could also seek additional ideas for searches on their media theory research projects. Media theories are kind of the glue, I think, when it comes to studying how behavior is to various mass media phenomena. So we spend a good deal of time exploring the different media theories: agenda setting, hypodermic needle, selective perception. The list goes on and on. Students had to select any topic. So for instance, they could, let's say they wanted to focus on censorship. I'm just going to start broad. In fact, you're going to hear me refer to that one often because I had an excellent project with this student who focused on censorship and how she used metadata to kind of help her a little bit. But So if we're looking at censorship, then they had to select 3 media theories that they could use to examine the topic of censorship better. So this was part of that. They could choose either the traditional research paper of about 8 to 10 pages, or they could do a supplemental paper of 3 to 4 pages and something else. That something else could be a website that they might develop, a YouTube channel, an infographic. I also had a student do a podcast. So it varied, and their ideas had to be approved through me. I didn't just, let them run wild with it, but we did talk through their ideas, and I did a couple of check-ins, one of which I'll talk about in a moment. So that gives you an understanding as to how I'm getting ready to share with you the lesson. So it's in the media theory research project assignment in the media literacy and society class. So I scheduled a library workshop early in the semester. We're talking about maybe 3 weeks after the semester started. So my first day was spent with my instructional librarian, who also happens to be the interim assistant dean of university libraries at Murray State University. And we kind of did a split session. I had about 30 students, and we met in one of the library classrooms, which could only hold about 18 to 20. So she took half of my class, and I would take the other half, and she would guide them on using library databases on that. And then the other half that I had, I kind of showed them some things, also the library databases, but not everything, because I knew that was going to be her. But I also spent more time talking about the project and start generating ideas. And then after about 30 minutes, because it was a 75-minute class, we flipped. So the students from her session came to my classroom and vice versa. So that's how we did that. But that was a very productive session in which she showed them how to use Boolean searches, how to, or which databases would be more appropriate probably for many of their topics. For instance, communication and mass media complete would be the big one. But she would show them how to navigate our library website. That was on a Tuesday. And then on Thursday of that same week, then I kind of went a little deeper, but still on the surface. I knew that when we're talking about metadata and introducing it to undergraduate students, overwhelming them with that kind of information is not going to be helpful. So I spent the second class day, we talked about metadata, specifically how we can use various authority records and headings as part of controlled vocabularies. So that was really studied. We did talk about social tagging and uncontrolled vocabularies, so they are helpful. In fact, again, that session that I noted earlier about using social media, citing the social media content and how we can use that, I shared a lot of those same lessons too, making sure, okay, if you want to follow this, that's great. What's the source? You got to verify that. That takes some time as well. And then I gave them a class activity. Once we went through that, then I gave them a class activity. Again, I wanted them to focus on the controlled vocabularies a little bit. So we use the Library of Congress Authorities Database, which some of you, I can't see anybody's faces, and some of you might be frowning, and that's fine. But I found that to be at least helpful for my undergraduate students at the time. Okay, so I wanted them to use the authority heading search to see how terms in their research topic might relate to other records. So for instance, let's go back a little bit. So when they were in their library session with their library instructional leader with her on day one, she kind of went through them a little bit, discussed with them what their topics might be, and then try to help them somewhat. So we did the same thing, but just kind of adding on this metadata layer, because what I was already hearing from several of the students, including one who was focusing on censorship, was that it was so much, and they wish they could see some sort of possible string of terms or some other headings or other keywords that could be useful. So I thought, based again on my instruction from my foundations course, that this particular database could be helpful. So that's what they did. And so when I say they practiced, they used their subject or their research topic. And then I would have them think, pair, share. So they would get with their buddy and just kind of see what they all came up with. I've learned that students often can process information better when they're just able to get it out of their heads, out of their mouths, and just really talk. And I think that's so helpful for them. And I really found that class activity to be extremely useful. So again, just more of a visual, we did focus more on that controlled vocabulary. So therefore, that's why it's a little bit bigger. But we did spend some time also on uncontrolled vocabularies, looking at social tagging and how both the pros and the cons of that. And I think that being that, yes, we call this generation part of the digital native era, but if, again, they may not know how to really navigate it effectively. So I wanted them to be aware of how our information structure is constructed. And then, by the way, I also, well, I think I mentioned in this one right here. So let me just kind of stop my thought and just kind of go over some observations and feedback that I can share with you. So, and none of this has been measured. So I didn't do any surveys. This was just more anecdotal. This is what I saw. This is what some of the conversations were with students. So I really don't have any plans to right now turn this into a research project. I mean, the possibility is open, but right now I'm still trying to make it better. So here are some of my observations as well as some of the feedback. So during that 1 week library workshop, the students have indicated, and they indicated to either me in conversation, or I did notice it on my course evaluation, that really the additional search terms, looking for all of that, and finding other ideas related to their media theory research projects. When we looked at metadata, they found that to be useful. One even told me, he said, I had always heard the term, but really didn't know what it meant. He said, I just feel like I got a little good slice of that right now. And I said, well, that's great. You know, that's really what I wanted you to do, is just have a slice of it, because I think that's really important. And then the week before spring break, so they did that 1 week early in the semester. I had a suspicion that even though we made good progress in that first week for our library workshop, I just had this impression that I bet none of them had really gone with their drafts, because their drafts were going to be due after spring break. So I thought, okay, we were caught up on the content required to study as in the media literacy and society course. We were doing really well on time. And I thought, you know what, we're going to do another round. So we did. So the week before spring break, we used a computer lab. We went to a computer lab, and basically they worked on their drafts. But what I did is I provided some refreshers. So for the first 15 minutes of each class, we went back over the library databases. I said, I know that Professor Thompson has shared this with you all, but we're going to do a refresher. And then on the second day of that week before spring break, on that Thursday, then we did another refresher on metadata, which I noticed they were like, oh yeah, that's right. That's the part I'm really needing. And I said, well, that's good. So that additional guidance, I think, was really helpful for them. What I found with their media theory research projects, and I'm only doing this in a comparison, I have taught this course before, and I've used this particular project before. So what I did do, again, in no systematic way to really measure, but what I did notice just from observations, I felt that these projects were more focused. They were more defined with better themes and better argument development. So this was, I'm not really sure though if that was connected because of the focus on the library workshop and thus the metadata, or really just better. I don't know. So I can't say that conclusively, but I feel like it did help. So that was really important to me. So I know I want to continue this line of trajectory with my students. I did have 3 students who shared how they appreciated the attention to metadata. So the one in particular that I remember the most, and the reason why is because I've known this student previously, but she has a strong focus and interest in censorship. But she had admitted to me that, it was really focused with the United States. And she kind of wanted to branch out, but didn't really know how to do that. So the metadata aspect, I'm going to walk through the lesson with that idea anyway in just a moment, as far as what she did, and then I can show you how all this really worked. So they do appreciate the attention. To me, 3 students out of a class of 30, I think that's good. Even if it was just 1 student, I still think that would have been good, but I don't have any statistical significance to share. Like I said, it's nothing measured. It's just, to me, it's just some sort of little progress that I think is helpful. I do want to stop here though and get out so that way you can see what I did and before I move any further. So let me kind of just move this some. So this is our library website. No thanks, I don't need any help right now. So let me just kind of put in there censorship. And we're just going to go with all library materials. So I know that both Professor Thompson as well as we would do this, and then we shared with them how to narrow the search down even more, because right now it's showing, almost 48,000 results. Well, we definitely want just peer-reviewed journals for this. To see, so that narrowed it down some more. So that we went through all of those functions on the left side of the panel. But even so we're seeing articles. So I'm going to click on this article here, China Strategic Censorship. And so what I did, that I know that Professor Thompson, I know she touched on it, but what I wanted to do to make that connection more to the metadata was we go under the subject list where this article, it's part of these subjects here. And that gave them an idea, hopefully. I know in one particular instance on another topic, it did for this student. I said, even some of this can be considered what we would call metadata. I said, but, if you're really wanting to see how it's really more structured officially, maybe if that's the right word, then I said, then we're going to turn to then the Library of Congress authorities. So I'm going to enter that, search authorities, making sure about my time here. And I'm going to, I always either told them the subject authority headings or keyword authorities, we're going to probably be better for them in their research topics. But we did go over the other ones just a little bit, not much, because again, I didn't want to overwhelm them. I wanted to go kind of the top of the mountain level, maybe not so much a surface level, really just top of the mountain. Just here's just the high points that I want you to see. So I'm just going to stay with subject authority headings. I'm going to go with censorship. Begin search. And what happened here with this student, when she did that, she was a little overwhelmed. And I told her, I said, believe me, I was too when I saw all this. I said, but I just want you to look at this listing. And she said, Dr. S, I didn't think about how I might want to also focus a little bit with these theories onto maybe censorship and some of these other countries. I said, awesome. I said, that's why I wanted you to see this, because I think this could also give you some other ideas to pursue. So she did that. She wanted to look at some of the, she selected certain countries that she was most interested in. And so this was really helpful to her. In many cases, it was helpful to a lot of the students. There were a few who felt like this was maybe too much, and that's fine. But for many of these students, this is something that they felt like they needed, because we can come up with a number of terms that we can use and, our string of searches there, but sometimes we just need additional guidance. And I think this is where the metadata can be helpful for them. So I wanted to share that with you as to how I did that. So this was spent quite a bit of time, again, in one of the class sessions that during that first library workshop week. And then that week prior to spring break, we did it again. And they really found that to be helpful. So moving forward, this is kind of what I'm thinking. I don't know if I'll get to all of them, but one in particular, I think I will. But this is what I'm thinking for this semester. I would like to create a module about metadata, more so for my graduate students. And the reason why is because we, in the graduate program, it's all online, and it's mostly asynchronous. So I want to be able to have that for them. So I'm thinking about ways to do that. I can work with my librarian, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but also thinking about how could we do a LibGuides page on that would be housed in the journalism and mass communications area. So that's an idea too. I haven't quite decided yet. So again, I am going to introduce to graduate courses. I just don't know how. I just don't know what that delivery might be. I do think it's important for them to see that, and I think it'd be useful, particularly as they approach that. Not just for my classes, but as they move through the program and then reach that point in the program where they have to do what we call a comprehensive project. It's not really a thesis, although some students do a thesis, and that's fine, but it becomes that real research project. I think for this to really gain maybe more traction, there are other activities and assignments that we can do. It doesn't have to be the research project. It can be anything that maybe we feel like, let's do a little bit more research into it. I just don't know what those are yet, but I am trying to figure out and pinpoint some of those activities and assignments. So we've got a little bit of time left for questions coming up, but just a review of the session objectives. So I'm hoping as you went through this that maybe something came to mind about a possible course where you could start with this if this is something that interested you. I really hope that faculty, so I'm talking about just faculty. I know faculty are always concerned about getting their content covered, but oh my gosh, like I said earlier, academic libraries they're central to everything we do at a college or university. So I'm really hoping that a library workshop could be encouraged to your faculty to do somehow. I don't know what that would look like, but I just think it's so important. And if a piece of that could include maybe a focus on just, again, the top of the mountain level metadata. And then if there's one activity, maybe one assessment, it doesn't have to be high stakes, it could be just low stakes, but just something for students to practice and apply their knowledge and skill in using metadata. So that way they have more of a understanding, and I think even more of a respect for it. There are my references, and I will be sharing my presentation as well. So you'll have that as to, and like I said, this is not anything based on any formal research exactly, just my activity, but these are research sources that I've used. And I thank you so much for attending. I'm on Twitter often as well as LinkedIn. So, feel free to connect and we can create more metadata. How about that? So that is my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments, any guidance from you.
As mentioned in chat, thank you so much, Dr. Shemberger. As mentioned in chat, please use chat to submit your questions, and I will post them forward. Thank you so much. This has been so interesting. And I know there was a comment earlier about how social media has so much metadata, and that is one thing in my teaching that I've used as an example to get them thinking in terms of its own value to a student. And I'm wondering if maybe that was really beneficial to your students when they saw its practical application, right? Because we use filters in everything we do when we're shopping online or anything else, like even trying to organize photos for our Instagram or what have you, right?
I saw the question about let me do that right now. I'm going to create the link for that. Copy your link, done, and I'm putting that in the chat for you right now. There we go. And always, and please feel free to, to email me again, tweet me, whatever is good for you to do that way if you have any questions. But I really just appreciate. And then yes, I am glad. I am so nerding out about this. You don't understand. I've always had an affinity for libraries. I mean, going back to, I think we all do, right? We're all here. And I have I just have the greatest colleagues at Murray State University. And I think that their influence rubbed off on me. That's really what it is. I respect them so much. I just want to know what they know. And really, I love it. So yes, I'm so glad I started this program. It's probably the biggest investment I've made. So thank you for that question. Do I talk to students about the source a lot? I do not, and thank you so much. So I think that's a good point. And I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Linnea. I like that idea. So thank you for that. Thank you, Teresa, for that comment. Yes. It's very important. We have to scaffold these things for students to do this kind of work well. And we got to give them, I try to use class time in a way that's also going to be helpful because they're taking a lot of classes and they have a lot of other demands today. So I want them to be able to use some class time constructively. So, it is a process. So thank you so much for that. Okay. Got it. I understand about yeah. And, and that was the thing too. So I did have a few students who, they were like, this is great, Dr. S. They weren't enthusiastic, but, there were, again, those few, especially that one, her name was Caroline, who did her project on censorship, and she really appreciated it. And then I also had a student, I didn't mention this, he was wonderful too. That's what he wants to study is library science. So he was, he geeked out about it as much as I have. So. Can you see how it can be used in more typical research sessions? Yeah, I can see that, how it can be used in a different, in fact, you're giving me an idea now, John, about this, like a faculty development session on my campus, where I think that the more we can kind of share these ideas, the better. In my graduate courses, particularly, I can see again where this might be useful for them. I am teaching a research methods and public relations course as an undergraduate course this fall. I have them go through a research proposal development. We do a little bit of literature review. So yes, I think this is also where I can integrate this as well. Would I consider having the library? Yes. I think that's a great idea, Teresa. I know my librarian, they're just wonderful. And she knows I can call on her to come back a second time. I think that might be helpful. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. I like that phrase, Jennifer, right sizing topics. I think that's and I think that's why I wanted to keep this, at the top of the mountain level. It's just a little bit extra. That to me is what it was. It's just something extra, because and this is something that I've done too, and even in my own studies. So when I was real quickly, I know we're running out of time, but when my course this semester that I took, which was I took a research methods course. So I teach a research methods course in my field, and then I had to take one in the library science, which was fun. I learned so much more, but we had to develop a research proposal on an issue in library science or information science. And I actually had to use that string because we were coming up with so many ideas, and I'm thinking we're overlooking something. So and our topic was about ChatGPT and artificial intelligence in library use. So I actually went to the Library of Congress authorities database and did the same thing. So it did help to kind of right size some things. So yes, thank you.